G'day and welcome back to the Vassals of Kingsgrave. We are an offshoot of a podcast of Ice and Fire, and today you have chosen to join us for the 56th installment of the epic linear A Song of Ice and Fire reread. This episode has the potential to spoil any events of George R.R. Martin's published works, including the Winds of Winter preview chapters. However, we do not discuss the TV show A Game of Thrones, so if you are a non-show watcher, feel free to keep listening, you won't be spoiled. I am your host today, Sarah aka Lady Weaver on the forums, and today I am joined by Tanja.
Hi, this is Tanja, Scilens on the forums.
Marie.
Hi, it's Mary, Nymeria on the forums.
And Noah.
Hey guys, it's Noah, Pops88 on the forums.
So, last episode, that's episode 55 if you'd like to go back and listen to it, it covered the events from the 7th of January to the 13th of January in the year 300. So that's Tyrion 9, which is the start of his trial where Oberyn Martell offers to be his champion, and Jaime 7, which features Jaime's return to King's Landing. Today's episode covers the events from the 8th to the 22nd of January, aka Arya 12, Sansa 6, and Jaime 8. All of the events of today's chapters take place within 62 pages of the books, or 4 chapters in the published order. Bina has actually made a note about how notable it is that these chapters at the end of A Storm of Swords really do cover a lot of material so quickly.
Definitely.
So a talking point for after we've discussed the chapters.
Let's go then.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, let's get on with it. So this is Arya 12, and the last time we saw Arya was in Arya 11, and that was when she was struck over the head by the Hound at the Red Wedding, and that happened on the 15th of December 299. That was actually chapter 52 of A Storm of Swords, and in the published order you don't hear anything more about her until this chapter, which is number 65 in the published order. Rather than the 13 chapter difference from the published order, the linear reread has a 15 chapter gap, and that's 15 chapters where we don't know anything about what has happened to Arya and whether she's still alive or not, so it's a bit meaner. This chapter picks up on the 8th of January 300 and covers until the 22nd, which in my hard copy is pages 309 to 319.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, in this chapter, Arya still is travelling with the Hound, and they're on their way to the Eyrie now, seeing as the whole twins thing didn't quite work out. And Arya is processing the information of having lost pretty much all her family except Sansa and Jon at that point. She seems to be severely depressed about this. She doesn't really want to wake up. She just wants to spend the entire time sleeping, and she probably would if Sandor didn't keep making her get up every day. She has lots of dreams. She has wolf dreams pretty much every night. So we find out that Nymeria seems to have her own pack now and seems to roam around with that. Arya also has her own horse now, which was a horse that they found wandering around after the Purple Wedding. The Hound has become a bit less cautious around her and doesn't keep an eye on her as closely as he used to, so she constantly keeps thinking of killing him in his sleep or riding away, but she never goes through with either of it. And the main reason for that seems to be that she doesn't really know where she would go, because she doesn't really seem to have any options anymore. So as they keep traveling around, they come across a wounded survivor of the twins, and Sandor ends up giving him the gift of mercy. After that, Arya tells the Hound that she wants to go back to see if her mother and brother are actually really dead, because they never saw them die. And the Hound tells her that that's a bad idea. But Arya really wants to go back, and she goes to sleep that night thinking of her mother, and then she has a wolf dream in which she drags her mother's corpse out of a river, and wants the corpse to rise again and to eat and to run with the wolves. But then the wolf pack has to scatter as Nymeria or Arya hears men riding towards them. When she wakes up, Sandor brings up her mother again, but she says it doesn't matter anymore because she now knows that her mother is dead. Which I wonder what he was getting at and what he was going to say. But yeah, so she's decided that those wolf dreams are reliable enough, and she believes that she saw her mother dead there and that she's actually dead. So they keep travelling on towards the Eyrie, and they come across a village where they end up staying for some time because the Hound finds some work there. And in that village they found out that the mountain clans, who have now returned from the war and are armed properly, have been making the roads much more unsafe and are raiding villages, so going to the Eyrie isn't really an option anymore. One thing that's interesting is that there's a little girl in that village who's the same age as Arya, but we see a really stark contrast between the two, because the little girl has a doll that she carries around with her and she cries easily, and she seems like a fairly normal child of that age. But Arya just thinks she's too childish and can't relate to her at all. And it would be interesting. I mean, Arya probably wouldn't be that kind of child who's dragging a doll around with her. But it serves as a reminder that Arya is really, really young to have seen all the things she's seen and to have been thrown into all these situations. So after the Hound is done with the work he was doing in that village, they get kicked out, and the Hound decides that they should go towards Riverrun to try and ransom Arya to the Blackfish. But Arya wants to go to the Wall instead, to Jon, because he's, apart from Sansa, he's her only living relative, I guess. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nicely done.
So one thing I found interesting about the chapter, I mean, this is a fairly small thing, was that when Arya wakes up again from that dream where she finds Kat's corpse, is that the Hound brings up her mother again, and I wonder, I mean, he can't realistically have considered actually going back for her, so I wonder what he was going to say, and Arya just cuts him off, saying it doesn't matter anymore. Any thoughts on where he might have been going with that?
I think it's George trying to show us a softer side to the Hound. So we don't know what he was going to say actually, but we can just imagine that he was going to say something nice, like, I don't know, about your mother. Maybe she's not dead and actually kept hostage, and I don't know, but I assume he was about to say something kind of nice. But maybe I'm totally wrong.
I actually agree with you, though, because in this chapter, I think we actually see Sandor soften a lot over the course of it.
I think, in some way he's trying to escape his whole reputation. I mean, he's a very harsh person, but it's not all there is to him. And we see that he's he softens to her, and as you were saying.
I actually, after this chapter, I reread the Broken Man speech by Septim Meribald, and I felt like this chapter, obviously, that comes later on in the reread, but I felt like this chapter read in conjunction with that, or that in mind, works so well, and you can almost hear him, Septim Meribald, telling this story with the Hound as the person, and how, I don't know, everyone's undermining him because he fled from the battle. He's, he has no allegiance to anyone. He's got no direction. He's just got so much anger. Like, Arya comments on it a couple times, and when he, he's chopping up firewood and he just like destroys a tree with an axe.
I found that very interesting, because then later in the village it says Arya sometimes practiced her needlework with a stick, and then she always ended up getting so angry that she just smashed it against the tree, which I think is very similar.
The similarities are...
Yeah. So they do have quite a bit in common. They could relate very well if they tried, I think.
Well, a lot of people... I find it... I mean, maybe I'm not as aware of certain theories as I should be, but obviously maybe some people in this podcast are big Sansa fans.
Yes.
And but I'm actually a massive, not obviously in a romantic way, but like almost like Arya is the Hound's squire. He's not a knight, she's not a squire or a boy, but you get that feeling. It's sort of like a dark Duncan egg or something. Is the feeling I got in this.
That's very dark.
I love their dynamic. I do really, really like that dynamic. I think they work very well together as characters.
They're brilliant, and as you say, you can see him kind of softening, and I just really, like this chapter because they're bonding, and it's probably one of the big things I'd love to see again is the two of them meeting up, and
yeah, that would be cool. I don't know if it's very likely, but I would like it.
Yeah, I think Arya would kill him.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind that Arya has changed a lot as a person, and not necessarily for the better.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't she take him off her list?
She does, yeah.
I think she does. But she goes kind of the opposite way. I think this chapter also is a good setup for what happens next for him, meaning at least what we assume is him, the Hound, still alive on the Symptoms Island. I don't remember the name. Quiet Isle, and doing some work for them and being in a sort of quiet working life. And that's kind of what he does for a few weeks there or days there, just working on building this big wall. And I think it's setting up for the next thing.
Yeah, whereas, it's a good segue into his next the next part of the arc.
Whereas Arya just really goes the opposite way and feeds on her anger and emptiness.
She does, yeah.
And does not find she doesn't find any quiet anymore.
Yeah, I think this chapter shows that Sandor, he does at least sort of want to part ways from his persona as the Hound, because it seems like he would have been very happy to stay in the village and be a simple, ordinary man, rather than having to fight and be a soldier for the rest of his life and to kill people. Whereas Arya doesn't seem to accept that life, and she doesn't want to stay there, and she doesn't want to stay and be a simple village girl. But I think Sandor has seen enough of the world so that he appreciates what that sort of lifestyle has to offer.
Definitely. I mean, they're obviously in life, they're at different stages, and he's fought in a lot of battles, and he's seen enough, really.
Yeah, they're both broken, but not at the same stage of broken.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Arya still needs to work through a lot of what has made her so broken, especially because of a lot of what made her so broken is something that happened in her chapter right before this one, because her mother and brother were brutally murdered recently, very, very recently, and she still has to come to terms with that. And as far as she's aware, her two younger brothers are both dead, and her dad was executed in front of her, so that's almost all of her family. They've all died.
Well, and it's these distant connections that, you know, she's just, you know, she's just tossing them to one side. She's like, oh, you know, Lysa won't care. Blackfish has never met me. I've got no one.
It's interesting that. I mean, we can probably talk about this also in the Sansa chapter, but they're both kind of in the same mindset of no one is here for me anymore. Because Arya thinks that her aunt won't care for her. The Blackfish doesn't know her, and she has lost everyone else. She doesn't even think of Sansa. She only thinks of Jon. And Sansa is kind of in the same, like, I have no one anymore. My aunt doesn't really love me. She realizes she just wants her for a claim to Winterfell, like everyone else. So they're both really, really alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does really make you wish that they could be reunited so that they could depend on each other and use each other as a source of comfort, but that doesn't happen, or at least not yet.
I think maybe she doesn't. The feeling I get from Arya is she's a very practical person, and maybe she thinks about Sansa less because even if she knew where Sansa was, she couldn't help her. She's thinking about the people who can help her, and Lysa can offer her protection, the Blackfish can do the same, and Jon also as well, at the wall. Even not knowing that he's Lord Commander, I don't know if he is yet at this point.
Well, not yet. We haven't gotten to that, It's in a few episodes in the reread.
Well, in terms of time, I guess it's probably just before this. I guess it's the
I think it's episode 63 where he's elected, so it's
okay.
It's in a few episodes.
I guess we haven't had the battle.
It's soon.
But still, even without him being in that position, he is still in a position to help.
Yeah.
And as well, as far as Arya is concerned, and the other Stark siblings, the Night's Watch is a place of heroes. Like, through all of the stories they've heard growing up, they think of it as a fantastic place. It's true.
They
Arya
know about.
Might
they
be
know
a
about
little
Brave Danny
disillusioned, but like,
I mean, I think Arya has had more experience, like with Yoren, for example, as well. So she has a particular view on that, I suppose, like a different perspective than Jon, for example, does. But yeah, I guess one thing she's doing is she's also thinking of places and not just of people. And Sansa isn't really in a place that's worth thinking of because she's not in a location where Arya would be safe to go.
Yeah, they're lost to each other. I mean, Sansa doesn't think of Arya either because she thinks she's dead, and Arya doesn't think of Sansa because she cannot help her anyway. So
what I did find interesting here is that she does actually think of Sansa in this chapter, but she just thinks of thinks of going back to Hotpie or to Gendry, and then she thinks that that's one of those stupid things Sansa would have thought. So she does actually think of her, but in this very, very, very kind of childish, casual way, and also in this fairly negative way as well.
Do you think at this point Arya believes Sansa's alive, and she just disregards her?
I think so.
Yeah, I think she does.
Because she has no reason to believe otherwise, and she, like, even with her mother and her brother, who she has reason to believe are probably dead, she's really reluctant to accept that they are. And the first things I haven't seen them die, so maybe they aren't actually dead. So I don't think she would think Sansa is dead.
Yeah, and also we have to think of the way she left Sansa. So when she left King's Landing, she didn't really know what had happened to Sansa, but last she saw her, she was really in love with Joffrey, and really she adored the Queen and everything. So, I mean, I think Arya really doesn't think much of her sister, so she could just be thinking that Sansa is all right and well in King's Landing, being the court's favorite. I mean, I'm not even sure she thinks of her as a captive in King's Landing or anything like that.
Yeah, she might not even have thought about which side Sansa is on at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Because as far as Arya is concerned, she might just think that Sansa has rolled over and changed colours, and that she's a lion now and not a wolf anymore.
Yeah, when you see what Arya says of her and how she reacts to everything Sansa does in book one, she really there's not a lot of love there, sadly. So
yeah, I agree, Marie.
But in any case, I thought this was a kind of a new thing here for Arya. Ever since Ned's execution, she's very, very angry. Very, she wants to fight. She wants to get revenge. She wants to get home. She wants to find her mother. She's making decisions and trying to move forward, move to Riverrun, move to the Twins. But there, she's saying it. Or at least she's thinking it. She's just empty. And well, it's not. I'm not saying something very new and exciting here. I mean, it's obvious that the murder of her mother and brother is the last straw which pushes her to be really lost to the world, I think. But we see that in that chapter, she's really there's nothing left. She doesn't fight the Hound. She doesn't do anything really.
Yeah, I agree. She's always been a very driven character for the entire storyline. And then this chapter, she seems to pretty much lose that drive. But then towards the end, it seems to be coming back. So if I was reading this for the first time, I'd probably, like, in the end, it's kind of a gradual thing. In the beginning, she just wants to sleep all the time. And then in the village, she's really frustrated with being in the village, but also doesn't really know where to go or what to do about it. But she has this feeling of being restless and not wanting to be there. And then towards the end of the chapter, she suggests going to the wall. And if I was reading this for the first time, I'd probably just expect her to start the next chapter by trying to get away from the Hound and trying to make her way towards the wall. That's the next thing I'd expect now.
Yeah.
I feel like someone far more intelligent than me can pull some sort of symbolism out of Arya destroying the doll and comparing it to Sandor and wanting to play with his brother's doll in the village.
Well, yeah, because with Sandor wanting to play with Gregor's doll, it was more of an innocent thing that he wanted to be a knight, and it was very pure. But with Arya destroying it, it is just an act of anger, and it's almost thing.
Yeah, and in this setup, Arya would be the mountain rather than the hound, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she has this little child following her and trying to be like her. Not trying to be like her, but obviously like admiring her, and the child is looking for a friend, someone to play with her, and just crushes her. I think that's kind of similar to Sandor and Gregor Clegane. That's a nice parallel. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that's really
So I had one more thing on this chapter. Very early on in my podcasting days in the reread, when Tyrion was going through the Mountains of the Moon, I made a theory about the mountain clans coming to aid Sansa in the Vale, rallying for the half-man's wife, basically. And it shows, this chapter kind of is one of the very few mentions you get of them showing their strength. They mentioned Timett One Eye. And I just wanted to throw a little something in there about that theory, and thinking it's going strong so far.
It's a nice theory, though, providing that they know that she is Sansa Stark and that she is Tyrion's wife, and that they still respect that bond to Tyrion. Otherwise, not really.
Well, I mean, he promised them the Vale.
Yeah. So they might see it as she is what Tyrion promised them, so they will rally behind her to get what they were promised with her as a figurehead.
Exactly. And she's probably going to be quite chaotic by that point, and fully on board for selling someone downstream, be it whoever, in whatever scenario she finds herself in. And could maybe spin it like, oh, this evil Harding man is keeping me against my wishes, or, kill Baelish or something, I don't know.
Probably kill Baelish. Yeah, and I guess that Baelish is, especially in the last Sansa chapter, that he really was giving her a lot of advice about power. Or maybe that was at the start of this chapter as well.
It's a lot in this chapter, yeah.
There's a lot about the mountain clans and their strength.
Yeah. So George might bring it back in, and that would be great.
I think the idea is also nice because everyone deserted Tyrion. He has no one rooting for him at this point. And it would be nice to see some last idea of loyalty to him through the mountain clans. But I think it might be a little bit too optimistic and romantic for George.
Oh, it's certainly romantic. Of course it is.
That they would do, because they kind of got what they wanted. They don't have the Veil, but they have steel, they have,
armor.
Yeah, so they already got a lot from Tyrion. I'm not sure they would view Sansa as really the way to get to the Veil. But it would be nice that because they do respect Tyrion in the end. He showed them that he was capable and cunning and strong, even though he's a dwarf. So maybe they could have some loyalty for him. I don't know.
Well, they were, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were involved in the Battle of the Green Fork, where Roose threw away a bunch of guys, and they were also they were in the Battle of the Blackwater as well, because when he wakes up.
Yeah, and afterwards they were sent away.
Tywin's paid them off and sent them away.
Yeah.
So
it's another blow to Tyrion. So, he was in a position of power in King's Landing. He had his clansmen, and when he wakes up, Tyrion has sent them away. But we don't know what the clansmen thought about that.
Well, they fought. They got some extra resources, and they went home.
Yeah, that's the way we hear of it, but yeah.
I think this might come into play once Sansa's identity is revealed. I mean, who knows? I could be giving them too much credit, and they're just a bit more Neanderthal-like and don't really follow politics and who gets married to who. And
yeah, that would be
But in a way, they strike me that they might pay a lot of respect to her, because of Tyrion, if they do respect him a lot, that might filter through, like you were saying earlier, rather than being like it's a one-off deal, because with the clan system, isn't it built a lot on respect? So
strength and respect,
yeah, so they might actually still respect Tyrion a lot and try to help his wife.
Well, it's funny because you see, obviously, later in the books, the mountain clans of the north know quite a fair bit about what's going on in Westeros, and without going into it too much, are probably aware of certain conspiracies in the north, if they're there. So it's kind of a bit of a basis to think that maybe these mountain clansmen are more in the know than we might give them credit for.
Yeah, and as well, the northern mountain clans were very, very loyal, so that's...
Well, exactly, that too.
Yeah, this is interesting. Let's move on. Not necessarily to a new chapter, because we still need to talk about Arya's wolf dreams.
Absolutely, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
One thing I find interesting is that I don't suppose she's fully... we don't get that much reflection of hers about the dreams, as far as I can recall. So she doesn't seem to know that she's essentially warging, I guess. But she does seem to take the dreams very seriously, and when she sees her mother dead in the dreams, there is enough confirmation for her to accept that she's actually dead.
I think she just accepts that the dreams are real, and that's something that's happening to her. It's like very natural to her. She doesn't wonder about what's happening. She doesn't make the connection to Nymeria, I don't think. So that's kind of... Yeah, she dreams of wolves, and the next morning she's convinced that what she saw was real, and she doesn't get much into it.
Do you think that she thinks it's real, or do you think that she thinks it is a message from the old gods, and that it is more of a vision, and that it's just a sign that her mum's dead?
I get the sense that she thinks it's real, but I don't know if that's the case. That's how I would read it.
I don't know, because indeed, if she does think it is real, she would have to wonder about how she sees it, right? Why does she dream of it? So it might be just that she's very convinced of what she saw, but she indeed believes it's kind of a message or a vision, but she doesn't. Yeah, she really doesn't dwell on why she sees it or how.
Yeah, I don't know.
At some point, the Hound suggests they go to Riverrun. I mean, at the end of the chapter, to go to the Blackfish. And Arya says or thinks, I don't remember, that she's tired to go to Riverrun. She feels like she has trying to make for Riverrun for years. And that's also kind of how we feel as readers. At least that's how I felt, like, for the whole of Storm of Swords and probably a bit of Clash. She's just moving in the Riverlands, trying to get to her family, and it's been months and months. So she's as tired of it as we are, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, do you think as well, with Arya not wanting to wake up and wanting to stay asleep the whole time, that it's not just because she is depressed, but also that she's living through Nymeria? Do you think it is slightly addictive? Like, warg dreams are addictive?
I think we see something similar in Bran, don't we? Because Bran starts walking into summer, and they have to remind him to actually wake up and keep eating in real life, because he prefers eating as a wolf. And then,
yeah, that's a good point.
It makes me wonder if it is addictive.
Well, I think it is, to the extent that their real life, quote unquote, is so empty and awful right now that it's reassuring to to live through their wolves. I mean, for Bran, summer is a way to walk again, to run, to hunt, to be alive. He feels more alive in summer than in his own body, and it might be kind of the same for Arya. She feels so empty, but when she was with the wolves, it's so much better. So I guess it's addictive in that sense. I don't know if we can really know if it's really addictive in a more clinical sense.
I would imagine that the sense of belonging plays a huge role here, because she's pretty much lost all her family. Like Sansa and Jon are both. Well, Sansa is completely inaccessible to her, and Jon almost completely inaccessible.
Yeah, she's always talking about finding her pack.
Yeah, and then Nymeria has this pack around her. She's amassed this pack around her. Much in the same way that Arya tried to, I guess, with Gendry and Hot Pie. So it seems like Arya and Nymeria have been doing fairly similar things, but it seems to have been working out much better for Nymeria. And Arya, as a wolf, has the sense of belonging where she is the leader of her own pack, and she probably quite enjoys that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, she might also have been recovering from the massive blow to the head that the Hound gave her, because
probably also true.
Yeah.
Crazy dreams after having been hit in the head. So that's how
it was just a scratch.
You know, with the timeline, this chapter is about a month after the last time we see Arya at the Red Wedding. But we also see Nymeria pulling Catelyn from the water in this chapter, but wasn't she meant to be resurrected after 3 days?
I think this was discussed in a podcast recently already, that indeed the timeline is a bit surprising here, because it's indeed about a month between Catelyn's death and when she's or maybe less than a month, but it's longer than we think it is, I think.
I mean, I wonder if part of this is Martin maybe not having quite decided the nature of these dreams at that point. Is that possible? Because I view them as walking, or like seeing directly through Nymeria's eyes what's happening at the moment, whereas I guess they could be displaced in time.
I mean, it's also... so the Red Wedding was... When was it? 25th?
It was the 15th of December.
15th, okay. I thought it was a bit later. But in the linear timeline, there's a specific mention of when Nymeria gets Catelyn from the water, and I'm trying to find it because this chapter takes a lot of days. So I mean, according to the timeline, indeed, the Nymeria fishing out cat from the river is on the 18th, so 3 days after the Red Wedding. So it's not clear. It's not clear at all if this dream.
Yeah, it's a time-delayed dream.
Yeah, or it's just maybe not clear in the chapter, because it's supposed to go from the 8th of January to the 22nd, but it's also a lot of Arya remembering wanting only to sleep and to be with the wolves, and so I'm not sure how the dream is presented in the chapter, but
yeah, it's true. It doesn't. It doesn't have to be. The dream doesn't have to happen at the main time point for the chapter. It could be reflecting on a dream that we had early on. Maybe that's it. That makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, or it's just Martin kind of screwing up his timeline too, maybe.
Which would never happen.
Never.
No.
Him and Era, that'd never happen.
And I mean, when you see how convoluted it is in this linear timeline, I'm not sure he had a big spreadsheet of what happens when he wrote this, so maybe it was not as clear in his head as we're trying to make it right now.
Yeah, I think he didn't write it to be dissected the way it's being dissected now.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was reading this, I didn't think about this, and I'm sure, when I was first reading it, and I'm sure none of you did, so
yeah,
it's just looking at this and scrutinizing it. I guess when you're reading it, it doesn't, like when you're just reading it the first time, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, and normally you wouldn't be trying to pinpoint exactly when this chapter takes place. It's just a general scene. Okay, a bit after the Red Wedding.
Yeah, I rarely thought about precise timing when I was reading the chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Okay. Do we want to talk about Sandor giving one of Sir Mark Piper's men mercy, the gift of mercy, so a mercy killing?
Yeah, I found that quite interesting given... Are we talking about spoiler chapters?
Well, I said we would be spoiling everything apart from the Game of Thrones. So yeah.
Well, I guess have we all read the spoiler chapter?
Well, are we talking about the Mercy chapter?
The Mercy chapter, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Mercy.
I think, yeah, this scene is most interesting for Arya's reaction, not what's actually happening, but the way Arya basically doesn't really react to this.
She does ask whether they're going to bury him, which I wonder if that's just a practical question or if it's like a
I think
spiritual humanitarian thing.
Yeah,
I don't know, like her caring about him as a person to some extent.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's the remaining of her humanity and ideas of we should bury this guy, but she doesn't fight for that. Like she doesn't. She's not shocked. She's not. It's not traumatizing to her what's happening there, and she's kind of indifferent to whatever the Hound tells her. He's like, yeah, this is where the heart is. It's how you kill a person, and she's like, yeah, it's one way to kill a person, but
that's such a cold thing to.
That's such a cold thought. Yeah.
It is, especially because Sandor has probably done this a lot of times before to fallen soldiers that were seriously injured in battle and wouldn't be able to survive. That it's something you do to your fallen comrades or other people fallen on the field if they won't survive. That it's the decent thing.
I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, and I don't think it is a shocking thing to do in that context. But if you think about Arya as a child, I can't remember how old she is at that point, but like as a child of the same age as that girl who drags that doll around with her, and she has that reaction to it, and then in the same chapter we hear about this girl who cries if she scrapes her knee.
Well, what's her death toll at the minute? She's already killed 2 guys I can think of.
2, yeah, I'd say.
But that's really extreme for anyone, and particularly someone of that age. So.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not surprising that she reacts this way. It's everything has been leading to this, but it's still interesting to see how cold she is about death.
Yeah, I think the thing that is surprising about it is that she doesn't empathize with the soldier that is so grievously wounded. I feel like she is very, very detached from what she is feeling and doesn't factor that in, and that she is going on and will be doing the same thing to other people in the future, but she is very cold about it, and will probably still be very, very cold about it, and it doesn't have any emotional impact on her.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we see, in previous Arya chapters, she does think of the 2 men she's killed. She thinks of the stable boy, and she thinks of the guard, and but she mostly, as I think we said before, she mostly think of those killings in terms of what her mother is going to think of it, and the fact that she was raised to believe it's wrong to kill someone in this, at least for her, but she's rarely really, she doesn't really feel bad about it from the point of view of, oh, I killed a person, I actually took a life. That doesn't really register in her. It's really regarding what other people will think, not what she feels about it.
Yeah. I think Arya is a very, very cold character.
Yeah, this chapter really reinforces that.
Yeah. Do you think it is a matter of circumstance that she has had to become someone quite cold to survive? Or do you think that she was always someone who was very cold and realistic, and that this has just forced her to lean into it to a very high degree?
Yeah.
I feel like she must have had some predisposition.
Yeah,
like
that's
Sansa
what I was about to say. Yeah, exactly. I mean, from the beginning, we see Arya as a very she's a tough child. She's a tough character. She wants to. She's always expressing that she's free. She has rights. She can learn the sword if she wants to, and she's never really. Like, she doesn't sympathize for Sansa. She doesn't feel sympathy for, I don't know, Tyrion, or she does feel sympathy for Jon a little bit, but I mean, regarding his position as a bastard. But she's not a very sentimental person, even from the get-go. So I think circumstances are the reason she is how she is now, but there's some predisposition to it.
I completely agree. I think she's exactly that. She may have some characteristics that's helped her through and have encouraged, certain maybe bloodthirsty tendencies, maybe, or a certain callousness that she's developed that maybe Sansa couldn't have. For example, if you're going to compare the two sisters, would not have had. But then in Sansa's position, Arya would not have had those skills in order to survive in that predisposition. So I think in a very twisted way, and they've both had really fucked up experiences, they're both almost geared towards the paths that they lead, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah, that they are lucky not to be in each other's positions, otherwise they both would be dead.
Yeah, clearly.
We should definitely move on, but I have this. There's just so many, in a really twisted way. There are so many beautiful pieces of imagery, and just the way George writes this. I think this chapter is why a lot of people love A Storm of Swords and think it's the best book. And you get things like just little lines like "he smells like a corpse," and the whole description when. I don't know. I find it really. It's quite. It's striking.
I see your point. I wouldn't call it beautiful.
See, my favourite line in this chapter is when Arya thinks, if he lost his belly for fighting, why does he care if his sword is sharp? About Sandor.
My favourite would have to be the men on horses with flapping black and yellow and pink wings and long shiny claws in hand.
He does great descriptions, though. So good.
It's just perfect from the eyes of a wolf. It's perfect.
Yeah, I love all of his wolf perspective writing. I think it's so... It seems... I mean, I don't know what wolves actually think or feel like, but it seems to fit so well. To me, it's really incredible.
You've always heard, like... I don't know, I mean... If you could speak to an animal, you wouldn't be able. You would never be able to understand them. It's not possible because of their points of reference are so far removed from our own.
You mean Ariel can't understand Flounder?
What? No, my childhood is ruined. Oh no.
Sorry.
No, the mermaid can't understand the fish.
God damn it! What's the point of being
She's
half
just
fish
putting on
then?
a brave face.
Okay.
But it's just, it's a really great chapter.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, let's move on to Sansa 6. So in my copy of the books, it's pages 353 to 371. The last time we saw Sansa, she was fleeing King's Landing right after the Purple Wedding, when she had been led into Littlefinger's evil clutches, and that happened on the 1st of January 300. So since then, 7 chapters in the published order have passed, and that boils down to about a week according to the linear timeline. And with this chapter, you just need to flip forward 4 chapters from Arya 12 to Sansa 6, which is chapter 68 in the published order. And this chapter takes place from the 10th to the 20th of January, so part way through Arya 12. Okay, hit it, Marie.
Here we go. Sansa arrives at the Fingers, which are a stony and desolate shore, after a difficult voyage at sea during which she spent her time in her cabin, sick and haunted by the memory of Joffrey dying. Littlefinger comes to her and she learns to her dismay that the Fingers are actually their destination and not Winterfell, home, as she thought. Littlefinger tells her sharply that everyone she loved is dead, that Winterfell is burned. as soon as Lysa joins them, she and Peter are to be wed, and they will all go to the Eyrie. So once ashore, they are greeted by the small household of the small tower that is the ancestral seat of House Baelish. Sansa and Littlefinger eat alone, and he tells her that she must now be Elaine Stone, his bastard daughter. He talks about the Game of Thrones, where everyone is either a player or a piece. He mocks Cersei, who will soon lose her beauty and everything else with it, according to him. Sansa understands that Dantos was a pawn and guesses that he is the one who poisoned Joffrey. Littlefinger laughs and proceeds to tell her that he has a lot of pieces in King's Landing, including the Cardle Blacks, through their father, who is actually a member of his household. But it turns out neither of them put the poison in Joffrey's cup. Didn't someone straighten her hen at some point in the evening? Littlefinger asks. Sansa, in a second, understands then who Littlefinger is hinting at, but she cannot believe it. Littlefinger explains how he supposedly set everything up for his master plan while at Highgarden, planting ideas of the White Cloak into Loras's head and Mace Tyrell's too, praising Joffrey while circulating rumors of his madness and cruelty, with the certainty that the Queen of Thorns would hear of it. And there it was. Lady Olenna understood that with Loras, Joffrey and Marjorie in the mix, there would soon be bloodshed, and that she couldn't stop her son from making Marjorie queen, but they didn't actually need Joffrey for that. Littlefinger predicts that Marjorie will wed Tommen soon. Sansa ponders over everything as she goes to bed, and she is relieved that the nightmare of King's Landing is finally over. After all, she's only a bastard now, and her Aunt Lysa will surely be nice to her. So when the party arrive from the Eyries 8 days later, she is shocked at how different Lysa is from Catelyn. She looks 10 years older, and she doesn't have her mother's grace. Lysa only has eyes for Littlefinger and insists that they marry right this night. He reluctantly gives in, which leads to a quick wedding, some dancing, a creepy bedding where Sansa helps undressing Littlefinger, and a very loud and awkward sex scene. Thanks, George. Sansa goes outside and thinks of her own wedding, and also wonders where the Hound is now. After a while, she goes back inside, wet from the rain, and Marillion goes to her. He tries to rape her, but she is saved by Lothar Brune. Sleep is not easy after that. She dreams of Joffrey's death, Robb's death, her wedding night with Tyrion mixed with the night when the Hound came to her during the Blackwater battle. Morning comes, and she's asked to go see the Lady Lysa. Aunt knows who she is and greets her with little warmth. She asks if she is with child, and when Sansa says that Tyrion never had her, she explains that she will be married to her son Robert Arryn as soon as Tyrion is executed. Sansa then understands that Lysa only won her claim to Winterfell and doesn't love her. Lysa proceeds to explain to her that the Starks were proud but defeated, and that she's now nothing, and she has to be grateful and obedient because they are the only thing protecting her. And that's the end of the chapter.
You know, I actually really like this chapter.
Oh, me too.
If you think about it, it's quite a weird chapter to like. I think this chapter is quite romantic in a weird way. It has a lot of romantic elements. It might not actually be romantic, but it's an interesting read if you look at it through the Sansa lens. Thanks, Tom.
That's not really nice.
But as well, I think this chapter shows a lot about how Sansa thinks and her relationships to both Tyrion and Sandor, and it shows a little bit of her relationships between her and Joffrey and Robb, and a lot of the relationship that is forming between her and Littlefinger, and the short one that forms between her and Lysa and how they interact.
Yeah, I think what we see a lot, and I think Bina said this on the last reread, what a lot of people take as romantic signs of Sansa regarding Sandor is actually just like she's just kind and nice, and It's the same with Tyrion. I'm not sure there's anything romantic about it, but she just reflects that they were not so bad to her. And the first idea she has is to say, I mean, when Lysa asks if she's with child, she just wants to say, no, we never had sex, because Tyrion was actually kind and didn't force himself on her, which is not the definition of kindness. It's just not being a rapist. But
yeah, that's a very low bar, isn't it?
That's a very low bar. But in this world, I mean, everyone expected Tyrion or anyone who married Sansa to, the marriage had to be consummated, right? So it's a very low bar, but I do think that Tyrion was kind in a sense to not only didn't force himself onto her, but he also never tried again. Like, he kind of accepted that this was not going to happen. He was bitter about it and hurt, but so it's kind of a kindness.
I do agree with that. I do think that's true in that context. I still think it's a low bar, but given the context,
obviously,
it's not. And he has to go against cultural expectations and the expectations of his family and his duty, so to speak. So it's still a low bar, but it's slightly higher.
But when you see what happens in this chapter, like Marillion tries to rape her, but I mean, the word rape is never to be seen in that kind of scene, because from Marillion's point of view, it's just, well, you're a bastard and I'm good looking and you're probably, you're weak and cold, and so you're going to want to have me, obviously. It's not he doesn't register the fact that maybe she is entitled to say no, because in this world, women are not entitled to say no. So I do agree that Tyrion not raping her is not like the great. I mean, it's not. Oh yeah, he's the best character. He didn't rape her, but it's important to see how low the women are in this world regarding sexuality and their own right to agree or not.
Well, I've met men like Marillion, so no. But on a serious note, no, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's important to keep in mind. And for what it's worth, Tyrion was kind to her beyond that, and he did to some extent, I guess, care about her. Like when she cries after finding out about the Red Wedding, he thinks about going into her room to comfort her, and then doesn't, because he doesn't think she'd take it well. So he does care about her, and he is kind to her beyond not raping her. So I think that's a fair thing to say.
And she's sad about the idea that Tyrion is going to be executed for something he didn't do.
I think that Sansa is more of a humanist, especially if you compare her to Arya, that she cares a lot more about how other people feel, and she takes that into account a lot more.
Yeah, I agree. Tyrion does reflect on that. I just read a bit of, I know it's not the chapter we're discussing now, but the chapter of the wedding, actually, when Sansa goes to everyone and asks how they are. She's talking to Lancel and being all nice to him, saying how it's good to see him up and about and stuff like that. And Tyrion thinks that she's very good at this, that she has this quality of being she's she communicates well, she's a person who can actually understand what other people are feeling, and she cares about people. So it's really her main one of her main qualities, I guess, that we see all throughout this chapter. I mean, she's very rarely angry or resentful. She only sees the best in people, she's even...
Or she at least tries to see the best in people in very, very hard circumstances.
I mean, there are people she hates, like Joffrey. She can't stand him. She hates him, but it's still a terrible thing for her to witness his death. I mean, she does think about it time and again in this chapter. She dreams of it. She dreams of the scene, and so it's still traumatizing to witness.
That's again a very interesting parallel to how Arya deals with death.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways these two are very similar, but then they also are complete opposites in some ways. Like the way they deal with death and the way reflect or don't reflect on other people's feelings.
It's like they're two sides of a coin.
Yeah, I think that's an idea that George made very clear from early on, that Sansa and Arya are really the two very different characters who are still both strong characters, strong female characters, even if we only just starting to see that in Sansa.
With Tyrion not raping Sansa, Jaime is also very against rape, and we see that with all of his chapters. Do you think that has something to do with...
Do we though? Is he though? Is that really true though?
Okay, apart from that one time in the Sept...
Okay.
With all of the other cases, though, he stops Brienne from being raped. He takes Pia with him and ensures she won't be raped anymore. Do you think it has something to do with growing up with Cersei?
I think, I think it's an entirely different conversation because, we're going to see Jaime in the next chapter, so we might as well. But Jaime never had any interest in any other woman than Cersei. So, in a sense, he cannot understand the idea of rape because the only person he's ever had sex with was Cersei, and it is a very, very passionate relationship and not a very sane one. So I don't know. I don't know if he's against rape per se. I'd say that it's more than that he.
Do you think
for some
it's
reason
because they respect women? Like with a lot of the men, it seems like they don't respect women and look down on them a lot. Whereas I think Jaime and Tyrion both see women as having a brain in their heads, and
maybe
whether
a
that's
bit more
because they are surrounded by stronger women or women with strong personalities like Cersei and Jenna Lannister.
I find that interesting, given that those two didn't grow up with a mother. So, but yeah, that's a very good point. They do seem to relate differently to women, despite I mean they both clearly have their issues and they both do things that they shouldn't be doing. Tyrion doesn't end up being so great later on. Or I don't know. There's a lot of issues there, but they do seem to relate to women differently than the average male character in the books.
Yeah. So I when reading this chapter, I think the way I really like it is because we learn a lot about Littlefinger's plans. I'm not sure we can trust everything he says because it's Littlefinger after all. And like already in this chapter, we see lies. I mean, he lies to Sansa about the story between Tyrion and Tanja. Yes, Tyrion did have a wife, but it didn't happen as Littlefinger is saying. So
is that necessarily a lie, or do we know how much Littlefinger actually knows about that?
Oh, I think it is a lie. I really do. I really do think it's a way to demonize Tyrion, so that if Sansa had any warm feeling against him, he wants those feelings to be gone, so that he can have Sansa all for himself. And even if it's not a question of feelings, he wants her to have no shame, no remaining loyalty to Tyrion as his wife. And I think that's why he tells this story.
Do you think it's because Littlefinger wants her to be dependent only on him?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
It's a very manipulative and abusive relationship between them, isn't it?
Yeah. But so I'm not sure we can trust everything, but on the rest of it, it's basically saying how the Purple Wedding was orchestrated and how it happened, which is a very quick revelation. It's revealed almost immediately after the Purple Wedding.
He's such a little show-off, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think he wants to impress Sansa so much that it might be one of the only times where Littlefinger actually tells the truth, and he's not. I mean, he is manipulative, but he just wants to show off about his great plan, which delivered her from the big bad Joffrey.
That he's gloating about it as well, and he's so happy about being the reason that a 14-year-old kid was murdered.
Yeah.
I think there's so much to say about this chapter actually, but I think one of the things on that topic of Littlefinger is this: it's almost humanizes him, seeing where he comes from and seeing like this little, I mean, compared to all the lords and ladies that we follow, he comes from the shithole basically.
Yeah.
What does he say? Lord of mud and sheep shit or something like that. I think I'm paraphrasing.
Isn't it Lord of Rocks or something?
Pebbles and sheep shit or something. It's the idea. Yeah.
Being Lord of Sheep is great because you get so much wool and then you can knit a lot with that.
You would love that.
I would be so happy. Free wool!
But he's just so, I don't know, it just makes you think, oh, actually, he's not this mysterious guy. He's just someone who's reaching far beyond his standing.
Yeah, like he's clawed his way up from being somewhere with not a lot at all. Yes, he might be a lord, but he's definitely not someone from a great house or a rich house or even a powerful house. And he's clawed his way up from practically nothing. Because really, if anything, what he was born with is something that a well-off farmer might have or a merchant. But it's really not a lot, not compared to the other people we follow in the story. And he's clawed his way up from that using his brains to a position of power where a lot of people do depend on him or have depended on him, and that really is a testament to him.
Absolutely, and you almost want to admire him because of how he's risen. But because we know the real Littlefinger and how he what he's had to do in order to reach where he is, it's the first time I think it shocked me a bit, just reminding me that actually this is just the simple man behind all of this intrigue and mystery, and like how he interacts with for lack of a better word, his staff at his little tower. Like he's cracking joke with the I don't know, is she a cook or just the maid or something like that, and all talking about her bastards and just having a bit of fun there, and you can see how he's quite a likable guy when he wants to be.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess he'd have to be to get to where he's gotten from where he started.
Yeah, no doubt,
Obviously,
no doubt.
Or at least the ability to be charismatic when he chooses to.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a hint at Loras' sexuality in this chapter. Because, it's not very important, but it's the kind of thing, obviously, I didn't see when I was first reading this. He's talking about the fact that Mace Tyrell was really happy to have Loras on the Kingsguard, because this way he doesn't have to find lands and a bride for him, and the quote is, which is doubly difficult in Loras' case. And it was just like, it's another little hint that we don't see on the first read.
If you were Mace Tyrell and you had to marry off Loras to someone before pre-Kingsguard, who in Westeros would you try and match him with?
You try to match him with the best alliance you can make for your house. It might not necessarily work, but you'd go for the best deal you could get. Especially if it won't be a marriage made of love, it will just be a marriage of convenience. So,
yeah.
So, Wallace Stokewith, right? So just go for the heir of a house, really, isn't it?
Right. I wanted to mention.
That's a good shout.
Yeah, so one of the reasoning here is that if Loras, Marjorie and Joffrey are all in the mix, there's going to be, Joffrey he's going to be crazy as he is, and Loras will want to protect Marjorie, and there's going to be an Aemon the Dragon Knight situation. I think it's just nice to see that Sansa actually thought of this a few chapters ago when talking with Marjorie about Joffrey, and Marjorie was all like, but it's going to be fine because I'm going to have my brother to protect me. And Sansa thought, well, it's not going to, I mean, it's just going to end badly if you counting on your brother to protect you this way. So, I mean, it's something that she had already perceived, and it goes again to say that she's a very, she perceives a lot of things in people.
And as well, if Loras did try to protect Marjorie from Joffrey, he'd probably be put to death because, to be perfectly honest, it's treason to go against your king.
Yeah.
From a Tyrell perspective, it makes the Red Wedding make a lot of sense now.
The Purple Wedding, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. A little...
just add a bit of blue.
Yeah, that's what Littlefinger is explaining. That's the reason he gives for the why Lady Olenna murdered Joffrey is because she knew how it was going to happen if they let things play out.
Was anyone else surprised at how uncreepy Littlefinger was in the bedding ceremony? Like, I genuinely thought that he would try and have a little squeeze on something of Sansa and just be a bit...
Oh, he was already creepy enough, wasn't it?
The thing is, he was creepy to everyone else but her, really. But the thing that is creepier still is that your supposed daughter is helping with your bedding ceremony because there aren't enough women.
But I mean,
what?
It's creepy. It's still creepy. Like the phrases, the sentences. He only smiled at Sansa during the bedding. No, that's really creepy. Like he just.
The thing is, they say that Littlefinger gave as good as he got, and that all of the other women are flushed and their laces are untied and their skirts are in disarray. I'm like, what? Like, really? No.
Yeah, I should preface this by saying the whole bedding ceremony is incredibly creepy and fucked up.
Yeah, in itself, it doesn't have to involve Sansa
before
to be
that.
creepy.
Exactly. But I thought there would be more made out of it, but I don't know.
Well, I do think that these few words that he... I mean, you can read it both ways. You can read it as he did nothing to Sansa except smiling at her. But the way I read this is he only has eyes for her during the bedding. And even if he doesn't do anything, he smiles at her and looks at her while she's helping undressing him. And that's creepy.
Well, without getting too into it, does she, witness him doing the business with Lysa? Is that how the bedding ceremony works? Because that's really
no, I don't think so.
Not in this case, at least. It sounds like everyone was in a different room and they just heard Lysa screaming.
Oh my god.
Which personally I find really funny because you just hear her screaming. But
well, I guess it's better to find it funny. Yeah, I mean, at least you can have a good laugh.
Yeah, that's how I take it. Because otherwise, oh man.
But yeah.
Peter.
Too much information.
Or I wonder how it was said on the audiobook, because doesn't he say Pataya?
Pataya.
But with this, seriously though, do you think that Littlefinger only looks and smiles at Sansa because he knows that if he does anything, Lysa will be seriously pissed?
Yeah, maybe.
Probably.
Well, I mean, he must know that Lysa is
possessive,
crazy, and crazily jealous. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, why would she scream her head off so everyone can hear?
Yeah, she wants it. Yeah, she wants it known that
she does. Yeah,
I don't know. It might have been a while, you know.
And she screams her head off. I want another child. Again, I want another child from you.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you're just spouting off everything that he's Robin's dad, so your kids are illegitimate.
No,
she's already given away secrets.
I think she's not referring. I mean, either she's referring to. So the way I read it is that she's asking for another child, not another of your children, just another. It doesn't necessarily mean that she's saying that Robert Arryn is his. I don't think she's saying that.
I don't think she is. I think it's another child, as in I have a child.
Lysa says later on that Jon Arryn was gross, and when she's talking about him being gross, she says that his sperm didn't work and he couldn't get her pregnant, though.
Well, no, she's saying that all the babies died except for Robin, who himself is pretty weak. I'm really not sure.
That was because of the moon tea, though, wasn't it?
The Tansy.
Well, Peter got her pregnant when they were kids. So the Tansy.
Yeah, exactly. So this sentence, this "make me another child," could be referring to that, to the child she had to abort when she was forced when they were younger. I'm really not. I really don't think she's insinuating that Robin is Peter's child.
Yeah, but there's a line later on which says, John did his duty in the bedchamber, but he could no more give me pleasure than he could give me children. His seed was old and weak, all my babies died but Robert, 3 girls and 2 boys, all my sweet little babies dead, and that old man just went on and on with his stinking breath.
But that...
I think that was because of the Tansy, though.
But that line does make me think Robin might not be John's child.
Okay, but what do you make of the other babies who died early on or before birth?
They might have actually been Jon Arryn's children, but then in this chapter it says that Lysa got Littlefinger employed at the town near the Eyrie so she could visit him. So whether that's when Littlefinger impregnated her with Robin?
Yeah, I think it's kind of established that at some point they were at King's Landing together, while Littlefinger was Master of Coins and Robert Arryn was king. And it is also, I think, said that they had sex during this time.
Yeah, that definitely happened. But I think this has the possibility to go both ways.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wanted to voice the possibility that he is Littlefinger's child, because I think a lot of people think that Robin is Jon Arryn's child, and it would be interesting if he wasn't.
Would it, though? Because everyone in the realm, at least, thinks that he's Robert Arryn, so...
It would be interesting for Littlefinger, because later on it appears that they are slowly killing Robin with his medicine, and whether they are killing him or whether he is slowly dying from his disease and it's all catching up to him.
I'm not sure Littlefinger cares. I mean, he's willing to...
Yeah, he doesn't normally get his hands dirty.
Yeah, he's willing to kill Robin Arryn anyway, because he's of no use to him. He wants to marry Sansa off to another Arryn pretender. So I think that if he knew that somehow Robert wasn't Jon Arryn's child, well, he won't. I mean, he would be of even less use to him. So
it doesn't matter to him.
Yeah.
His origin, even if he's his own kid, he's not what he needs at the time. You know.
Yeah, I think he wouldn't care about a kid with Lysa. Like he would care about a kid with Catelyn. Like. But with Lysa, he has no respect for her, no real love. I don't think it would be anything to him.
Can I go in? So, where did the name Elaine come from? Was it Littlefinger's grandma or something?
Mother, yeah.
And so he has just created Sansa as his daughter, and in his mind, he thinks he got Catelyn pregnant. Or, well, not pregnant, but he thinks he had sex with her.
Yeah.
And it's just fulfilling this creepy, weird fantasy that he's manipulated.
Yeah. It is, especially in Sansa 5. He talks about how he could have been a father.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's super creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, super fucked up.
We actually talk about it a lot on episode 53, if you want to go listen to that.
Yeah,
So,
you.
shameless plug. Yeah, it was going to be called EUcast, but Bina renamed it so people would actually know what it was about.
That's sensitive. Yeah, it's. But I mean, even in this chapter, he's not as creepy as he can be, but still, I mean, that whole relationship. I mean, the way he explains things to her, being like all paternal and it's not okay.
I think he swaps between being a father figure to her and being a romantic partner to her in his own mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just flip-flops between them.
Well, that's the most incredibly creepy part, because he's basically created the daughter he never had, and he also wants to marry her and have sex with her. Like, just, ew.
Yeah, I think that's so.
He's just a vile. Like, I mean, this is why I say it's the rare time you see him as a regular guy. You know, he cracks jokes with people and he's just normal, but behind it all, behind the mask, he's just this fucked up user.
He is. He's very, very manipulative.
I mean, the whole way he manipulates Lysa, I mean, he has no love for her. That's made obvious by the next few chapters. And it's just, I mean, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Lysa because she's really crazy in the way she behaved with Catelyn in book 1, with Sansa now. She's basically threatened her, and afterwards she almost killed her. She's really crazy, but she also had a very tough life.
Yeah. Sorry. Do you think it's because she had a mental breakdown and that's what happened because of losing so many children and having to marry someone who'd be the same age as her father or possibly older?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit, I mean, maybe it's not as easy as that. I don't want to be too sure, too certain, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what that tells about George writing, because he does kind of the same thing with Scilens, who is in an unhappy marriage and loses a lot of children, and kind of same thing with Lysa, who's being forced to marry John Arryn, and
that's
they
a good
both,
parallel.
Yeah, they both kind of end up crazy from the loss of their babies. Which is, I mean, it does acknowledge that losing a baby is a very, very tough thing, but it's also, it also portrays women as very hysterical, and I'm not sure I like that, because that happens in the real world. Like, my mom lost a baby between my sister and I, and she always has tears in her eyes when she mentions that, but she's also a very strong woman and not crazy. So he's going a bit, I mean, it's a little bit too easy, you know. It's obviously a very traumatizing thing, and she had a very difficult life. But it's kind of too easy to say, well, she's crazy because she's a poor woman who lost a lot of babies.
And as well, it trivializes, well, not really, but a lot of people go through similar things, and a lot of women do, and they live through it, and they don't lose their sanity. Yes, it will be very hard, but they remain who they are.
Yeah, it's yes, exactly. Like, I do think that's what George is telling us. He's telling us, well, she's a woman who had a hard life and she goes crazy. He's telling us kind of the same thing with Cersei. I mean, the loss of her mother, the abuse from Robert, all of this. We discussed this many times, like the reasons why Cersei is how she is. Yeah, the death of her son and all of that. I think that's the interpretation we're supposed to have. I'm not sure I want to agree with that, because it's like, yeah, it's too easy. I mean, it's too sexist.
Simplistic?
Simplistic and sexist. I mean, it's just, obviously we also have men going crazy in this world, but...
Are they portrayed in these books, though?
What do you mean?
Like, are there any men who are insane? Apart from maybe...
The Hound is pretty bonkers.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I guess not in a same.
Is insane.
Yeah, no,
I think
it's
he
quite
is
different.
traumatized, but I don't think he is insane and doesn't have a grip on reality. I think he
That's true,
very
'cause,
much still has a grip on reality.
That is a good point. Men
Maybe
who, I
Gregor?
don't know yet.
Maybe, but we never see him established as having proper reasoning skills either. He is always just a monster.
Patchface.
Yes, Pet Voice is crazy, but
Yeah.
we also never see him as being sane. And
But that's because-
it's that
well-
he lives through something, and it's more like something possessed him, or at least that's how I see it. And that he saw something he possibly shouldn't have, and now
I mean, we
he's
kind
crazy.
of see that in some way in Tyrion. Like, he's being broken by life, and he really changes and becomes a very different character. But it doesn't. It really doesn't say the same thing than what George does with Lysa or Scilens, I think.
Well, I mean, I completely understand the point, but there are other examples of women in this story who lose babies. I mean, look at Daenerys. She lost her child at such a young age, but she's gone on to conquer, and it hasn't slated her character. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree
Still
that
think Dany's slightly nuts, though.
yeah.
Mm.
But George also portrays strong women. I mean, even like we can mention Catelyn. She did lose Ned and
What she thinks is almost all of her children.
yeah, and she does kind of crazy things. I mean, people around her explain everything through this, that she is crazy with grief, but that's not exactly what we see in her POV chapters. So he doesn't do that with all of his female characters. I'm just saying that regarding Lysa, I don't really like the interpretation that she's become crazy because of everything that happened to her this way. Because she doesn't just become crazy. She's very hysterical, and that's not a word I'd like to use, but I think it's what George tried to describe and tried to make us think of her. If you see my meaning.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You know, this reread is very thought-provoking and is very character-driven. I like it.
Yeah, they're very powerful chapters. From certain aspects. Sansa thinks about the Hound, and in the linear reread throws these two chapters together, and that her and Arya mention her and talk about her.
Yeah.
And they're not that far away. They're both in the east, technically.
Yeah, and if Arya and Sandor had have pushed through, they would have been going to meet Sansa in the Eyrie right now.
Definitely. If only. But yeah, I had one other thing. So how much of a badass do you think Lothar Brune is? Like, Marillion's a complete creep, and I would have loved to see him just kick the shit out of him. And then, do you think is he like a Bronn, or is he better?
I googled him earlier because Google has all of the answers, and he is legit awesome.
Is he? What does he do in the Blackwater? He gets his knighthood.
Yeah, he captures one of the lords.
Right.
Refresh page, refresh. I want to see what you say. He's also been in tourneys, and he did really well in them too.
Was he in the Tourney of the Hand at the beginning?
Yes, it's mentioned, I think, in a wiki of Ice and Fire, which is maybe the page you're trying to refresh, Sarah.
It is, yeah.
I'm on it right now. Yeah, he enlists for several tourney. He's the opponent of Dantas in Joffrey's tourney. So it doesn't. I mean, he doesn't really have anything to do. And yeah, he fights during the Battle of the Blackwater, and he captures Sir John Fossaway and kills a bunch of other Fossaways.
The Apple Eater. That's right.
Exactly.
That's a pretty cool nickname.
Are we all on the same page now?
No, I'm just scrolling through my memory.
Yeah,
You have a great
it's
memory.
just what they... Yeah, because I wouldn't have remembered the apple eater
It's
stuff.
just one of those little things. That's why I love these books. There's this one little thing that sticks with you.
With this, I think it is the hound, as in the dog, not Sandor.
Mm-hmm.
I think the dog growls at Marillion and then gets hit, and then I think it is actually the dog that goes and wakes up or gets Lothar Brune, and then Lothar Brune comes back, because it seems weird that it got so far and then Lothar comes, so he wouldn't have been in the room, or he would have been asleep.
Do you think the hound's a warg?
I think Sansa is.
No.
Oh, did she? No, but she wasn't asleep.
So
probably warg
Sansa
when she's
was
asleep.
awake.
No, it's not...
And she spent the whole day with the dog, and when she did go to sleep, it had snuck into bed with her, and when she woke up, it was there.
She spent more than a day. I think it's mentioned that basically the dog is always with her when she's just in the tower doing nothing. That's a fun idea. I'm not sure. I think...
It says as well, I wish you were a lady, which might mean I wish I was still bonded to my direwolf instead of you, and I wish she was here. But I still think it's really cool.
That I know.
That's a great pickup.
Yeah.
I'm definitely behind this now. The hound is a warg, 100%.
No, I think you misunderstood. What Sarah is saying is just that the dog went and woke Lothar Brune so that he could come and save Sansa from Marillion. I don't think Sarah thinks that the hound, the actual Sander Clegane hound, walked into this dog to protect Sansa. I think
I'm definitely down for that.
Well, now that's a theory. That's the crazy theory of this episode.
Well, because when she was in her time of need before, when those guys in the riot, the hound came and saved her, and now again.
You know what? I think instead of matching to wolves, I think Sansa matches to dogs because her personality is a lot softer. So whereas wolves are more dangerous and threatening to humans, like say Arya is, Sansa isn't. So she is warging and pairing with things that are softer, like dogs more. I think that's why Lady ended up being a very gentle wolf.
I think in this world, dogs are perceived more as followers, like they obey orders. That's why the hound is the hound. And they kill when you ask them to, and they do what you say.
Yeah, like Ramsay's dogs.
Yeah, they have loyalty, but they're more like these non-intelligent beasts who just do whatever you tell them to do.
Obedient.
I think, that's the portrayal, and I don't think that goes well with Sansa, because she's more. I think she has wolf in her. She's strong and tough, even though she's more tender than.
But I think she puts up a gentle exterior, so she fits with the dogs still. And then she's a tiny bit vicious, like Ramsay's dogs.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I don't think she's vicious, really. I think she's strong and intelligent, and she internalizes a lot of things. I mean, I think she's at least going back to the wolf. And wolves can also be, they're portrayed as very harsh animals who are violent and very strong, but I don't think that's all they can be. And I think part of Sansa's storyline is that she's becoming a Stark, a strong, cold, and still kind, but a Stark. Yeah,
she's getting her fangs pretty much.
Well, I think to put it in a different way, if you were like in looking back through the Weirwood at Winterfell when they were younger, and you had to describe all of them as wolves, as Ned and his siblings were, you'd probably call her a quiet wolf or a shy wolf, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think that in itself, it's like she's probably the most like Ned of all of her siblings.
But does that also mean she'll live the longest?
Possibly. She's quiet and she's intelligent.
And that goes a long way, especially in the world she lives in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all the characters who've lived this long are fairly smart or, well, lucky. Lucky or smart.
One or the other, or really good at fighting.
Or lucky
Well, I don't know.
and smart. I think he
Gregor
did
was the
both,
best at
probably.
fighting, and he died too.
But did he?
Fighters die.
Did he really?
Well, he definitely died. He maybe got resurrected, but he definitely died once.
But I think being good at fighting only gets you so far, but you also need to have brains behind it, otherwise you don't know when to quit.
Well, definitely. And I think the Hound shows intelligence by quitting when he does, to be honest. I mean, obviously he's scared of fire and all this, but he just comes to his senses. He's just like, fuck this.
Yeah.
You know? And as we saw in the previous chapter, he goes and he's happy to do some honest, hard work. He quite enjoys it.
It's probably really soothing for him, though.
Yeah.
Do we have anything more for the Sansa chapter? No? Okay. So from Sansa 6, just go back one chapter and you'll reach Jaime 8, and this takes place on January 12th. Okay, Noah.
Right. Let's get this Tower of the Hand up. Jaime peruses the White Book as he waits for the rest of the Kingsguard to arrive. He feels a stranger to his own family now and thinks himself unworthy to follow such distinguished Lord Commanders as Barristan the Bold, Sir Gerald Hightower, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, Sir Ryan Redwine, the Demon of Darry, Sir Duncan the Tall, and Alan Connington, the firstborn son of Lionel Selmy. Barristan squired for Sir Manfred Swan and was named the Bold in his 10th year when he competed as a Mystery Knight. Barristan squired for Sir Manfred Swan and was named the Bold in his 10th year when he competed as a Mystery Knight at Blackhaven and was unmasked by Prince Duncan Targaryen. Knighted by Aegon V Targaryen in his 16th year after entering another tournament and unhorsing both Prince Duncan and Sir Duncan the Tall. He slew the last Blackfyre pretender, Maelys the Monstrous, in single combat during the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Named to the Kingsguard at 23, he rode against the Kingswood Brotherhood, rescuing Lady Jane Swan and her sceptre from the outlaws and slaying Sir Simon Toyne. He rescued the King Aerys II Targaryen during the defiance of Duskendale, despite taking an arrow wound in the chest while avenging the death of fellow Kingsguard Sir Gawain Gaunt, and led the assault on Old Wick during the Greyjoys' rebellion. Jaime also looks at his own, much smaller entry, which states, among other things, that he rode against the Kingswood Brotherhood as squire to Lord Sumner Crakehall when he was 15 and was knighted by Sir Arthur Dane for valour in the field. He recalls that he saved Lord Sumner's life that day when Big Belly Ben was about to bash his head in, and also stood toe-to-toe with the Smiling Knight, though it was Sir Arthur that killed him. Ever the gallant knight, Sir Arthur had allowed the Smiling Knight to fetch a new sword at one point because his was so full of notches. When the Kingsguard finally arrives, Sir Boros and Sir Meryn take seats to his right, while Sir Osmond, Sir Balon, and Sir Loras sit to his left. Jaime berates them for letting Joffrey die and asks them if Tyrion killed him. Sir Meryn and Sir Boros are sure he did, while Sir Balon is not so sure, and Sir Loras thinks it was Sansa. Jaime tells the assembled that Tommen will be king, and that he intends to make sure the boy lives to a ripe old age. Jaime insists, assigns Sir Boros to taste Tommen's food henceforth, and insults the man when he balks. Sir Boros finally relents when Jaime challenges him to a sword fight before leaving in disgust. Jaime is glad Boros did not take him up on the offer, as in his state Boros could have easily won, despite being a fat idiot. He next turns to Osmond to learn more about the man, and is disquieted to learn that he is merely a sellsword who fought with the company called the Gallant Men in the Stepstones and disputed lands. He may not even be a knight, as his story of being knighted on the battlefield by a Sir Robert Stone appears dubious. Jaime dismisses him and focuses on Sir Meryn. He chastises the knight for beating Sansa at Joffrey's order, and tells him that from now on he will only obey Tywin, Cersei, and Jaime. Part of protecting the king is protecting him from himself. After dismissing Meryn, he turns to Balon. He welcomes Balon, but worries that his brother Sir Donal fought for Renly and Stannis, while his father did not call his banners and remained at his seat in Stonehelm. Sir Balon explains that his father is past 40 and had done with fighting, while his brother was captured by Sir Elwood Hart at the Battle of Blackwater, and swore fealty to the crown with all the others. Though Sir Donal is Tommen's man now, however, Jaime wonders what Balon will do if his allegiance changes. Balon assures Jaime he will do his duty. Finally, Jaime turns to Loras. As they begin to banter, Jaime realizes that Loras is just like him at that age. He asks Loras who wore Renly's armor in the fight against Stannis and learns it was Sir Garland, badass, at Lord Peter's suggestion. He asks after Renly's remains next and learns that Loras buried the man himself in a secret place. Finally, he turns the conversation to Brienne. Loras still thinks she is guilty, but has his doubts. Renly's gorget was cut through, which no man could have done. Furthermore, it made no sense to armour him and only to slit his throat. Jaime tells him to question Brienne. If he is still convinced she did it, Jaime will punish her. Otherwise, Loras must let her go free. There we go. Whew. So, Jaime, there's a new sheriff in town, sorting shit out.
You know, with Jaime being the Lord Commander, it was a bad decision to make him the Lord Commander when he was nowhere near King's Landing. And since then, he's lost a hand, so he's pretty much useless in a fight, so all he can do is command troop movements.
Definitely. He's got one use now.
Yeah, and that means they have to hope to God he doesn't lose his temper, otherwise he doesn't think things through and rushes in, and that means he's completely useless. So, time to turn into Tywin, honey.
I think a lot of this chapter is saying how low the King's Guard is now.
Hello, the Barras.
Yeah. But it's part of the whole. We see that throughout the series that it was just so much better before. You know, people were more chivalrous, and there were heroes and bad guys, and it's kind of every time we hear about Arthur Dane or even Rhaegar,
it's romanticized.
Can we just talk about how classy it is that Arthur Dane stopped mid-fight and was like, yeah, you need a new sword. Go get one. I'll wait. Come back. Like,
it's arrogance.
Class act. Yeah, it is a bit arrogant, but it still reminds me of the Princess Bride. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
I've not seen that film.
Dude, watch it.
The Smiling Knight sounds like such a badass.
Every time I read about the Smiling Knight, I think it's the Laughing Knight, and I get so confused. I'm like, say what?
The Knight of the Laughing Tree.
Yeah, the Knight of the Laughing Tree. Yep, not the same.
No, not the same, but they still make me think of each other.
They mention a lot of legends in this, and it's chapters like this that make me. Well, I've lent a friend the World book, so I don't have it at the minute. Actually, need to find him, hunt him down, and get it back. Some of these guys like Ryan Redwine, the Demon of Darry.
Just the names are super cool.
The Pale Griffin, Alan Connington.
That's the kind of thing that makes me want to read Duncan Egg stories and stuff like that. And it's kind of there's a lot of short stories that I haven't read because I usually don't buy the whole anthology just for one short story. So I've read the Duncan Egg, but nothing else. And I can't wait to read them.
They're awesome. Absolutely. Yeah, you get a mention of Sir Duncan the Tall here as well.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of them. I like the audiobooks are great. Read by the guy who plays Viserys, Harry Lloyd.
Oh, right, yeah. I love that
when
guy.
you're going to send me a link to that or something?
I did have one thing. So this is the chapter that we get the mention of Barristan saving Lady Jane Swan and her scepter, who some people think is Wenda the White Fawn, and what's her name? Septum, the one with Aegon.
Mordain? Scepter Mordain?
No, the one with Aegon.
Scepter. Oh,
Lemore.
Lemore, yes, Lemore. I think it was Radio Westeros who threw that out there, but it's just cool that we're at the chapter where they mention it.
Oh yeah.
It's a pretty cool theory. There's a lot that happens here. I mean, most of it is just Barristan being a general badass.
He is such a boss, and he's still beating people in tourneys at the age of 57.
Yeah.
And as well, most people his age would be dead, and he's still beating up all of the young guns. I'm like, Barristan, bro!
He's so... I mean, just some of the stories, like, he scaled the walls of Duskendale, slew like 6 men or something, got the king, avenged his brother, slew one of the captain of the guards, escapes with him, and, just...
The thing is, reading chapters like this, you can't help but love Barristan Selmy, or at least the idea of Barristan Selmy, because he's done so much and he's so well regarded by so many characters.
Well, but I mean, it's well founded, and obviously we get his POVs, and we know he's actually one of the few decent people in Westeros.
He's a bit like Davos, isn't he? Like, is this kind of characters that there's nothing.
I think he's more like Ned.
Yeah.
From a fan's point of view, everyone loves Davos.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone loves Barristan.
Yes.
Like 90% of people love Brienne, and there are some characters that are just universally liked.
I don't think it's true about Brienne at all, because I think some people are really annoyed about her boring chapters.
I
like her.
For Brienne, it's a question of her story is less interesting to some people.
Yeah, I think as a character she'd be much better liked if she had a more exciting story.
Yeah, I don't think that's her character. I think that really is her storyline, and that's not her
that's
fault.
exactly what I'm saying. She's a very likable character, but her storyline makes it so that we don't enjoy reading her as much as other characters, whereas Davos
I like them
has
both. Yeah, I'm with you. I like them both. I think she's great, and I like her. It's kind of like a nice. I mean, obviously, we all want to find out what happens next, but it's a nice breather from all the intense plotting and stuff, and it's just nice to see her having some adventures.
I think this is where it comes down to the individual reader. I mean, I really don't like the POV characters in A Dance with Dragons, but A Feast for Crows has all of my favourite characters, so I absolutely loved reading that one, but I hated reading A Dance with Dragons.
Yeah. I like both, actually.
So lucky.
But I didn't have to wait, so it's easy,
Yeah, I was in Dragon Dance for the wait.
Yeah, exactly.
With the White Book, what do we think Jaime could, would, or will actually write on his page now that he is in control of it?
Slayed the
First
evil
of all,
Queen
I think
Cersei.
I think it's very weird that they write about themselves and about all the deeds they made, because it's a little bit narcissistic, but
rather than having a Septon or Maester do it.
I mean, I don't know, but it
It's
makes
history,
sense.
I guess, kind of. I mean, that's how it kind of, in those days, it had to be. Not many people would have been in those situations to know that Jaime fought the Smiling Knight, and then Sir Arthur gave him another sword. Like, we only see it because Jaime was there.
Yeah, but is it really history if you're telling your own story? I mean, it is partly, but
you could fabricate it.
Yeah, it just seems to me that it makes sense. It makes sense in a way, but also like it could just like when you see that Jaime is frustrated that Barristan Selmy didn't write more of his victories in tourneys and stuff like that, you can imagine that he could easily write himself up a lot. So, but it's not such a big deal.
It's not in his character, though.
Is the theory behind it, though, that whoever the Lord Commander is won't do that, and that they will be an upstanding knight or member of the community, so that they won't?
Well, yeah, it's assumed, but I mean, it could be in someone else's character, and when you see the state of the Kingsguard, I mean, it just...
Yeah, but I guess the idea behind it is that the Kingsguard was for so long a paragon of virtue, but now with Cersei it has really gone down the shitter.
Yeah, but they're obviously they obviously have ambition as well, not just virtue, to make it to this position. So maybe I'm too.
I don't know about virtue. I mean, there were heroes and there were villains as well in the Kingsguard.
Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to portray a vision of virtue anyway. The white cloaks, the imagery, and then the vows that mean the chaste vows. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it paints it, but actually, the one that comes to mind for me is in the Dance of Dragons, Criston Cole. Like, he was
really not.
Yeah.
Just dumbing that down a lot.
It's cool though. I love all these stories.
They're great. I like that we see a lot of it through Jaime. because in the beginning we'd hear these sorts of stories through Bran because he was being told them by old Nan, but now we get to see more of what an adult thinks of it or what is being passed down through history rather than folk tales.
Well, he still has a very romanticized point of view about it, as we already mentioned. Like, he still thinks about these guys as the heroes of his youth and the knights he would have wanted to be. So, I mean, it's obviously different from Bran's point of view, but it's still not quite as nuanced as it could be. But it's also because basically we have nothing else than these opinions of these heroes. I mean, the only thing we have about Arthur Dane is how amazing and chivalrous and great he was. So maybe it's the adult point of view George was trying to have here, but it's still very. It just reminds Jaime of his youth and what he hoped to be.
Yeah.
Morrow's never realised.
I still really like this chapter, even though, like you're saying, it is through rose-coloured glasses. We get to see so much of what has happened in the past, and I really, really do like the fairy tale aspect of it and the romanticised parts. But I think that's more to do with me than anything else.
Oh, I think it has to do with George as well. I mean, I've already said it today. I think he romanticizes a lot of the past history, and I'm not sure, like, I don't think the characters are missing anything from the history. I think George doesn't write it this way. He writes a very romantic and black and white history, past history, and it's all very different in the present Westeros.
Yeah, and as well, history is written by the people who've won, so of course they'll romanticize it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, because I think if he really wanted to, because they've already written down that he killed King Aerys, he could add to that and write down why, and that he did it to save everyone in King's Landing, and that would be true.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we see throughout the series that it's something that really haunts him. Like, he tells Brienne about it, and it's very it has been hard for him, at least being
well, the problem is that he got caught.
Yeah, exactly.
When I don't know if you guys read the recent Maegor story that came out, but he was found on the throne dead, and one of the things is that a Kingsguard killed him. So why is Jaime known as the Kingslayer? Because he just sat on the Iron Throne with the dead body at his feet, as opposed to just killing him and fucking off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it would be in Jaime's character to try to put things right and write why he killed Aerys. I think he's now kind of too bitter about it. He never did tell anyone before Brienne, I think. So, I mean, what difference would it make in a book that no one in his present will read?
It might make a difference in how he is remembered and his legacy, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I guess the thing is, if he's not going to have any more children, or any children that think of him as a father, and he's not getting Casterly Rock, he doesn't have a legacy, and his only legacy is the Kingsguard now, or should only be the Kingsguard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the path he's decided, because Tywin offers him a way out.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's the only way for him to be remembered, like he would want to be remembered. But I'm not sure he still has that fantasy now with everything that happens. So
on a scale of 1 to 10, how full of shit is Osmond Kettleblack?
Oh my god. He just seems
I was
stupid,
knighted by Sir Robert Stone.
No, it's not Robert Stone. It's Robert Stone.
You can
Let's
tell
think of a name. Let's think of a name.
He's
quickly.
looking around the room, and all he can see are bricks and stone. And he's like, yeah, Robert Stone.
Exactly. It's just like saying, my name is John Smith.
Do you think it's more like Robert Aaron? No, can't say Aaron. Who am I going to say? Stone. Yeah, Stone. That's who it was.
I hope it's George taking the piss, because there are a lot of Roberts in this story.
Oh, so many.
Roberts. So maybe it's just, I don't know.
It's also like King Robert. Oh wait, no, he's dead. Can't be him.
I fought with a company called the Gallant Men.
Who else was in that company?
Never heard of them.
My brothers. And no, wait, that's it.
Yeah, it was 4 of us. We were a small group. Oh, Jesus.
And Jaime is just like, I mean, why did Cersei give the white cloak to this imbecile? Like, he's just... he doesn't understand.
You'd been better off giving it to Bronn.
Well...
Do you guys think he left it be because he's like, okay, he didn't get it the right way, but at least he's a better fighter than this guy?
I do like that he made Sir Boros the food taster.
Take it back, it's not delicious enough.
I can just imagine him. He's like, "Here you go, Your Highness. I'll just take a little piece off here. Oh, that's good. I'll just a little bit more. Just some fat old sweaty bloke stealing some kids' food. Such a bastard."
And leaves him with just a bite of everything. It's all good for you. Have fun.
Yeah. Alright, that's all clean.
I think Jaime dealt with all of these very well. I mean,
he did though.
Yeah, I like how he dealt with Meryn Trant and being like, is that Meryn Trant? Yeah.
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 Another shitbag.
Yeah, and being like, it's just like, don't you dare say that Joffrey made you do it. Are you gonna do everything he says, even though it's completely against your vows? It's interesting, and the way he deals with Sir Balon Swan as well. Like, what are you gonna do when your brother is against you and you have to choose between your king and your blood? And the other guy is like, well, that's never gonna happen. Well, it did happen to me. And it was a very strong piece of dialogue, I thought.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of the elephant in the room, you know. Everyone calls him the Kingslayer, but it's never discussed with him. It's thrown at him, but it's never like no one in the Kingsguard is going to mention that he killed Aerys. I mean,
and they'll never talk to him about it.
Yeah,
they'll talk about it in back rooms, but never to him.
Yeah. And there, Jaime does mention it. He's like, well, it happened to me, and you all know the choice I made, even though you do as if it never happened. So yeah, it's.
I feel like that's a line from the very first book. You know, when they ride into King's Landing, and is it Jon describing Jaime?
You mean riding into Winterfell?
And he says someone.
In Winterfell?
Yeah, sorry, into Winterfell, yeah. And he calls him, he says he's the Golden Lion, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then says, but they whisper Kingslayer behind his back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's exactly that.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, poor Jaime, I can see why he'd be so upset with everyone and annoyed at these people. Because he's had it done for decades. It's been 15 or 16 years at this point that he's been called the Kingslayer. And that's half his life.
Yeah, he must have realized by now that this isn't going anywhere. He's going to be stuck with us forever.
Well, it's like...
blame him for not wanting that, yeah.
It's like Tyrion says, you take it and you wear it as armor. And that's what he's done. He's just armored himself in it. But I think going back to your earlier point, this is such a... It's an intelligent chapter from Jaime. He deals with everyone well, as you say. And it shows that with losing his hand, he can still be someone.
Yeah.
You know? His powers are changing almost.
Yeah, he might not be able to fight anyone, but he still has a hand on the wheel. So
Yeah.
he's not completely stuffed.
Definitely.
Maybe things that have lied dormant in him are now coming out, because he has been surrounded by intelligent people with Tyrion and Tywin.
Not just Tyrion and Tywin either, because with Brienne and Kat, they're both intelligent women, and he picks up on that, and he doesn't think they're stupid. I think he's probably learned a lot from everyone he's talked to and had interactions with, because he's known so many people in powerful positions.
Well, that's it, but maybe he's not paid attention to it up until this point.
Or maybe he hasn't had to use it up until this point.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, he certainly doesn't have intelligence when he loses to Robb Stark. He gets lured out by Brynden Tully.
Yeah, I think it's also, like, rereading this chapter is Jaime's thoughts. So we are inclined to see this as a victory and as a moment of good leadership and management, because that's the way Jaime sees it. It's a little bit of the same thing when Tyrion is doing all his badass stuff in Clash, and you're like, yeah, you got Cersei, you did that, and you have that and that power, and it's like, yeah, great, good job, Tyrion. You were very smart on this, and then it all goes back, and it's also his undoing. A lot of the things he did in Clash is the reason he's being found guilty in his trial. And I fear, like when we read this from Jaime's point of view, we think, yeah, good thing. You did you were intelligent, you read what you needed to read in these people. But he also, Boros Blount is never gonna like him. He almost fought him in this room. He also reprimanded Meryn Trant, who's not a guy to like that. So you could also see that this could be the roots for fighting in the Kingsguard. So. I just mean to say that, yeah, we love these characters, so whatever they do, we're like, yeah, he's bright, he realized this and this, but it may not be just as great as we think it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't know how it's perceived by the other characters.
Yeah, exactly.
And with this, it's, for now, he's made some good decisions, but that doesn't mean he hasn't burnt bridges, and he may still come a cropper later, because he'll need things from these men that he won't be able to get. So, great point, Marie.
Thanks. Can I also mention something that might be a bit sensitive, but I think it's important? So I don't want to redo the whole conversation that happened in the previous reread. I think everything that needed to be said on Jaime 7 was mostly said, but also the whole question of whether Jaime raped Cersei or not, and I know that on just asking the question is already an issue and a subject in itself. But the whole discussion was also, does Cersei sees it as rape? And so there's just one line in this chapter when Jaime reflects that Cersei hasn't allowed him to be alone with her ever since that scene in the set. So I just want to say that from a literary point of view, this at least shows that there has it is one consequence maybe of that scene, even though we don't know why Cersei doesn't want to see him, but she does keep him at a distance, and I think it is significant.
Yeah, that's a great spot.
And regardless of anything else, it does show that there is a fracture in their relationship.
Yeah.
We don't know what the reason behind it is because we aren't in Cersei's head yet, but there should be a reason behind it. Yeah,
and we are not in George's head either, so it's been established that he doesn't see the scene in Jaime 7 as rape. So everything he writes after this he is not really writing any consequence of a rape because he doesn't see it that way. So I don't know if it's what he's writing about Cersei, but it's there in any case. But I think just this line was good to.
It's thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds to another discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on from that point, so no one gets upset.
Sir Garland, confirmed badass.
Sir Garland is perfect. I'm in love with him.
Let's be honest, all of the Tyrells are awesome.
No.
Even Mace, he's a bit weird, but I kind of like that he's a bit stupid, because it's so much fun to watch everyone else around him.
Yeah, but he's not amazing.
But I think the Tyrells are very enjoyable as a family. They are very, very enjoyable.
Yeah, that's true. Loras is a bit of a child.
Bit of a hothead.
But yeah.
But yeah, Sir Garland. And isn't he's the only one who stands for Tyrion, is it?
During the trial?
In the next chapter. Yeah,
Maybe,
we'll see in the next chapter, I think.
Yeah. But at least during the wedding and the chapter preceding that, he's always very thoughtful with Sansa. He's nice.
He's very kind and not a douchebag, like everyone else.
I mean, he's kind and he tries to avoid conflict. Like, he's not blindly kind. He's just,
he's a hottie.
Peace. I don't have anything else about Jaime.
He's married to a high tower.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any more points?
No, I think I'm good on that.
I take that silence as a no.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Linear Reread. So the next episode in this reread is number 57, and it will be hosted by Bina007. And the big thing that's being covered in that one is the Mountain vs. the Red Viper fight. So if you're reading along at home, it covers chapters Tyrion 10, Jon 8, and Jaime 9. So read along and listen to it.
Shit's gonna go down.
Legit, shit's gonna go down.
It's on.
Do we have any future episodes that we'd shamelessly like to plug?
Reread episodes, but...
reread episodes 657 to 389.
But
2018 is
regarding
going to be a good
things
year.
Other than the linear reread, we are supposed to record soon an episode about Elias Grace, this Netflix TV show. There's something in preparation for Mindhunter as well, I guess.
Awesome. And listeners at home, you can look forward to once we've finished A Storm of Swords officially, because we're going to have an episode about it. It's going to be a retrospective look at everything that's happened in this book, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be similar to We Need to Talk About Rob.
But actually, I don't want to be doing your job here, Sarah. Just if anyone wants to, has specific points they'd want on this Storm of Swords podcast, just go to the forums and just ask and tell us what you would like to hear.
Sign up.
Yeah.
Yes. At the moment, I believe that Bina has a thread going for questions, so you can put them there if you have any points you'd like to ask. And I'm the person hosting this, at least at the moment, unless anything changes. So I'm going to put up the call to arms soon, so you can always hit me up on there and let me know anything you want to ask.
Yeah, get on the forums, get involved.
Yeah. So to get involved, you can find us at podcastofIceandFire.com/forum. And you can also just Google a Podcast of Ice and Fire forums, and it pops right up every time. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, and WordPress by searching for Vassals of Kingsgrave there, and let us know what you thought of the episode while you are there, and if you have any alternative points for the episode, or just want to put in your 2 cents, hit us up on the forums and tell us what you think and why.
But only say nice things, please. Thanks.
Thumbs
Yeah, be
up,
nice,
nice
though.
comments, swipe right, all of that good stuff.
Thank you to my fellow hosts. We couldn't have done this without you.
Well, thanks, Sarah, for
Thanks for
hosting this.
hosting.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Sure, see you guys.
Yeah. Patana.
Can we just talk about how classy it is that Arthur Dane stopped mid-fight and was like, yeah, you need a new sword. Go get one. I'll wait. Come back. Like,
Arrogance.
class act. Yeah, it is a bit arrogant, but it still reminds me of The Princess Bride. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
I've not seen that film.
Dude, watch
Me
it.
neither.
Watch it, seriously.
I don't think it's that great. I've seen it, and it's okay. I don't understand why everyone's so into it. Don't watch it.
What age were you when you watched it?
24.
I think that might be it. I feel like if you're going to watch it, you might need to do it as a child, and then you'll love it.
Oh, that should
Well,
be
it's
so.
too late then.
I'm the oldest one in the room, so it's never happened. I've never been the oldest person on a podcast. Let's go. Children.
Because I grew up watching it, and I don't remember ever not having seen it. The same as Robin Hood, Men in Tights. Tights.
Yes.
I think
Watch that.
those
Oh,
two
I
movies...
I watched that for the first time the other day.
Oh, you did.
So good. I think those two movies, you need to watch them as children, and if you weren't around when they were released, because otherwise you won't quite get them.
I watched Men in Tights as a child. So.
It's a Christmas movie for me, because I always remember watching it around Christmas. So good! I still watch it every year.
Do a the okay rewatch.
Can we?
I'm in.
Legit, let's do it. Fan commentary, we can all talk along to it.
I'm in.
I'm in! Anyone else?
We can all wear tights.
It'll be too hot,
Yeah.
bro. I'm going into summer. Like, no.
Oh, Jesus, it's cold.
Only the
here.
men
This
on the podcast
sentence
have to wear
just
tights.
doesn't make sense.